Well, hello friends. It's me again. It's been a minute. Some things have changed. I don't live in Hawaii anymore. I live in North Dakota now, and I bought a very old house, so excuse any background noise you hear because it's old, it's creaky, and the walls are thinner than shit. It's been a while that I've done a YouTube video because I have not had the energy to be completely honest, and for whatever reason today I was like, I think I got time. I've completely forgotten how to start these. Oh yeah, I got a new cat. This is Sansa. The reason we named her Sansa is because when we got her, our other cat growled at her, and Nick said, she looks like Cersei, talking about our other cat. And I looked at him and I was like, it would be funny if we named her Sansa, and he was like, that's perfect. Freaking crackhead. Little crack baby. Hello. Hi friends. Hi. I'll be here for a little bit until she gets sick of me. So I wrote the script probably like a couple months ago, and then like I said, I just have not had the energy to actually sit down and film a YouTube video. My house is a complete disaster. Again, haven't had the energy for much, but work and sleep and chilling out pretty much. But today, figured, hey, I got time. Got a little bit of energy, got some Starbucks this morning, got some caffeine in my system, and let's just do it. Let's just do it, right, son? Sweet little baby, oh, she hates me so much. We're gonna talk about a Netflix series that came out like a while ago, so it's been a minute, so it's probably like old news to people, but I thought it was interesting. And then we're gonna talk about the true story behind the series, and maybe go over some details that were left out of the series, because you know, sometimes they leave out things, sometimes they over dramatize. They make it more dramatic. I'm gonna go over the information that I found looking up this story and kind of compare it to the Netflix series itself, and we'll just go from there. Notes. Also, I got an iPad for this very purpose that I bought months ago and have not used yet. So I'm just gonna read you really quickly the Wikipedia description of this show just because I'm not very good at wording it. So The Serpent is a British crime drama serial developed by Mammoth Screen and commissioned by the BBC. It's an 8-part limited series. It's based on the crimes of Charles Sobhraj, who murdered young tourists between 1975 and 2000. The series starts out and it's following Herman Knippenberg, who is a Danish diplomat or ambassador, or he works for the embassy. I don't know, either way, he works for the embassy in Indonesia, and he winds up getting involved in investigating these disappearances and murders of some Danish tourists. And it eventually leads him to Charles Sobhraj. And the series goes through and tells the whole story, which I'm about to tell you, so I'm not going to tell you the whole thing. I'm just giving you kind of the way that the story is framed through the series. Who is Charles Sobhraj? And so I had never heard the story, and I watch a lot of true crime shit. And I had never heard of this man. And so when I was watching the series, it didn't really click in my brain that it was a true story. It was kind of like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder if this is real. And then I looked it up and I'm like, holy shit. Why have I not heard about this? This is insane. Because Charles, as we go through the story, you're going to see he's kind of like a Charles Manson-y kind of character, not quite to that extent. He's more just a scumbag who was stealing money and subsequently taking people's lives. But he's got this Manson-y vibe about him, okay? He was born in Saigon in 1944 to a Vietnamese mother and an Indian father. The Indian father kind of just left, and his mother wound up marrying a French army officer, so they wound up moving to France. From the information I found, it seems that this French army officer did adopt Charles as his son. In the show, they kind of frame it that he didn't, and that he didn't really want much to do with him, which is kind of mirroring what I found on this guy. It seemed like he adopted Charles, but he just really didn't care. Oh yeah, I need to go back and mention that Charles's real name is actually, and I'm gonna butcher this, Hachan Pokwane Gurmukh Charles Sobhraj. Sure. Again, I'm sorry if I totally butchered that. So Charles' mother and this French army officer, they go on to move to France and they have more kids. And like I said, the French army officer didn't really see Charles as his own child despite adopting him. Again, it's kind of foggy whether or not he actually did wind up adopting him legally, but either way, he was not as well taken care of as the other children. But you know how things were back in the day, like people don't really care to take care of other men's children. As a kid, he kind of bounced between Indochina and France. He would get into a lot of like little legal issues in France, a lot of like stealing, burglary, that kind of thing. When Charles was 19, he was arrested for burglary in Paris. Jesus Christ. And he was in prison, and there was this young man who was kind of wealthy, and he was volunteering at the prison, kind of like I don't know if it was like some type of community service thing, but either way, he was volunteering there. The man was named Felix Desconier. Felix Desconier. I'm getting these names. I'm getting them down. But either way, when he was paroled, he lived with Felix for a while. And Felix, again, was a wealthy young man, so him and Charles would go to these big, extravagant parties, and Charles started to befriend all of these wealthier families in Paris and kind of gain their trust. As Charles was doing this, he would actually befriend them, and then he would let himself into their home. I don't know if he was like house sitting for them or something, but he would steal like jewelry and possessions, that kind of thing. Gems was a big thing, and you'll see that later on. As Charles was doing this, he was never really caught because these families trusted him because they saw him with Felix, who was already, you know, well-known, certified other rich person. And so they didn't really see any reason to distrust Charles. And while Charles was doing this, he wound up meeting the daughter of one of these wealthy families. This woman was named Chantal Compagnon. He eventually decided he was going to propose to her, so he did. That same exact day, this man gets into a car chase with police and is arrested. Despite him being a complete scumbag, and Chantal obviously coming from a wealthy family where she could probably marry whoever she wants, she decided to wait for him.
Daddy, I can fix him.
So in the show, the serpent, they get married because she's pregnant, but I'm not entirely sure if she was pregnant and that's why they got married in real life. But in the show, it was that she was pregnant and they had to get married because it was the right thing to do, and her family didn't really want her to marry him, blah, 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 blah. Either way, they wound up getting married in real life. Chantal, coming from a very conservative, white family, wealthy family, really did not take too kindly to their daughter marrying this kind of mysterious Asian man. They were kind of like,
I don't know, but
again, like I said in the show, they kind of said that it was because she was pregnant and her family's like, this is the right thing to do, which I can't really find a whole lot of information on it because I believe that later on, as you see, Chantal kind of lived a much more private life. So even after they got married, Charles continued to steal money and commit burglaries and fraud and all of that. And to avoid arrest, him and Chantal actually fled to India. So in order to move to India, they got Charles some fake travel documents, and they also traveled through Eastern Europe and were scamming people and robbing people to get some money together for when they got to India. Charles and Chantal, I keep calling her Chantal, I'm sorry. Chantal arrived in India, they moved to Mumbai, and they had a little girl named Usha. Fun fact I learned about Usha while I was editing this video is that she actually works for the US government doing counterterrorism things now. That's cool. Good for you, Usha. Name's different in the show too, probably just to protect her privacy. This is just the information I found on the internet. I got to Mumbai, Charles kind of started this business, and he was like kind of selling it to Chantal that it was like this really legit thing, but really he was stealing cars and money, robbing, fraud, all of that all over again. She didn't approve of this lifestyle, but she didn't really have a choice. She was a French woman in a foreign country, and he was all she really had. So for a while, she kind of went along with it and kind of figured out what he was doing was wrong, and she would always kind of help him out of the situation. So in 1973, Charles was arrested for robbing a jewelry store inside of a luxury hotel. While he was in prison, he faked having appendicitis. At least that's what the show portrays. In the information that I found, it was just that he pretended to be ill. They don't really specify that, but in the show they said it was appendicitis and that he was like trying to like kind of injured his own appendix, if that makes sense. He's out on like this kind of like prison release system, so that way he can go to like the hospital and get help and everything. And while he's out, he gets arrested again for robbing someone. This time, in order to get out of the situation, he actually found his biological father and borrowed some money from him. So they used this money to go to Kabul, Afghanistan. In the Middle East, there's this area called the Hippie Trail, because back in the day, before the Middle East was what we know it for now, a lot of times people kind of go on the spiritual journey, man. They're going on this spiritual journey. And Kabul was one of those stops on this hippie trail, and I'll post a map here so you can kind of see. Charles and Chantal would befriend all of these hippie tourists, and while they're on drugs or drinking or whatever, they would just steal money from them or rob them until the law caught up with them again. And this time, Chantal was done. She was like, I'm going to France. I never want to see you again. She swore to everyone that knew her. She was like, I'm never going to see this man again. So while Charles was in jail, he did wind up escaping, and he used some of the stolen passports that he had gotten from the tourists on the hippie trail, and he actually ran to Iran. There's a joke there somewhere. So once Charles arrives in Iran, he spends the next couple years traveling all over the Middle East, scamming people, stealing money, that sort of thing, until he finally meets up with his younger brother, Andre, who's his half-brother on his dad's side. They decide to go to Greece. And there in Greece, they actually stole someone's identity and were caught by the police. And this time, Charles actually blamed his younger brother, Andre, for this identity theft. And Andre was sentenced to 18 years in prison. And Charles just, back into the wind he goes. So Charles wound up going back to India, and here he continued to scam hippies on the hippie trail. He sold them drugs, and he even recruited some of them to sell drugs for him. He kind of posed as like this gem dealer and kind of sold it that like, oh, selling drugs is just like my side gig. He would sell it to these hippies, and they would sell drugs for him. So while in India, Charles actually meets a woman named Marie-Andre Leclerc, and she was a French-Canadian from Quebec. So she's a little Quebecois, is that what they're called? She immediately was just enamored and hypnotized by this guy. Like I said, he kind of had like this Charles Manson-y kind of thing with him, where he could just draw people in no matter how icky and scummy he was. He would just draw them in, and people just loved him for some reason. And for her, it was like, oh, he just like swept her off her feet, even though she knew he was doing this sketchy shit. So Chantal was just so about Charles. She would help him with all of his schemes, and she even like kind of turned a blind eye to his other escapades with women because she was just so in love with him. And he kind of also sold the idea to her that it was like, this is part of what I have to do, man, like to make money, man, whatever. Either way. So he actually started renting out rooms of this hotel and kind of created like a little hippie commune. Like, Marie. It was Marie, not Chantal, you stupid idiot. He would invite tourists in and be like, oh, I have this place for you to stay, that kind of thing. And he would just kind of lure them into his whole like pyramid scheme he had going on. And a lot of times he would take their passports and say like, oh, like he always had a reason for it, you know? But a lot of times I would leave people stranded, and so their only choice is to do what he says. And a lot of times that's stealing, selling drugs, that type of thing. And at one point he actually had these two men who were former police officers staying at this hotel. And the way that he kind of earned their trust is they were freaking out because they couldn't find their passports. Meanwhile, Charles was the one that has their passports. And so they're freaking out, and they're like, oh my god, Charles, what did you do? Blah, blah, blah. And Charles is like, give me a minute, man. Give me a minute, man. Like, I got it. And then he, like, brings their passports out. He's like, look, I found it. Like, somebody stole it. It's crazy. Yeah, right? And the cops are like, oh my god, thank you so much. Like, we owe you, blah, 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 blah. There's another tourist named Dominique Renola. I'm going to put the name up. These foreign last names are kicking my ass, man. I'm telling you, I need to start taking some language lessons or something. But Dominique actually was kind of one of Charles's henchmen, but Charles started poisoning him. And the thing that Charles would do is a lot of times with these tourists, he would poison them, but then he would like heal them. Like he would, I don't know if he had like some type of magical antidote or something, but he would heal them. And that's kind of how he got their trust, because they were sick. Because, you know, a lot of times like people go to foreign countries and you might eat something that doesn't agree with you or whatever. And so he would kind of sell like that, like, oh, you just ate something bad, let me help you. And then he would have like this magic antidote. So in the show, Dominique, they show him being really sick and being really scared because he didn't have his passports anymore, and he winds up escaping, basically. I don't want to give away the whole thing, but he winds up living, which is good because a lot of people in Charles's lasso of evil don't make it in this story. So while Charles is, you know, making friends and everything, he becomes friends with this man named AJ Chowdhury. And he was kind of like a local criminal, like, you know, one of those people that you see around. He's like pickpocketer, like not like anything serious at this point. He's just kind of everybody kind of knew he was a criminal and that he knew how to be sneaky and everything. So Charles kind of was like, hey, you're just my type of guy, let's be friends. So in 1975, Charles and AJ actually committed their first known murder. I say known murder because who knows? I just really don't have lipstick on. That's kind of weird, okay. a little something. At this point, Charles was only guilty of scamming and robbery. He hadn't taken anyone's life, allegedly. Charles continued scamming these hippies on this hippie trail and becoming a little bit more suspicious of him, and people were kind of around town were kind of warning them, like, watch out for this guy, he's kind of weird. He got really paranoid, so that's when he began actually taking people's lives. And 21-year-old Teresa Knowlton was from Seattle, and she was actually traveling on the hippie trail. And this is in 1975 when she met Charles and AJ. She was traveling to Tibet to go to a monastery and learn about Buddhism and kind of clean up her life, because from what I've read about her, it seems that before this trip she had like a lot of issues with like possibly alcohol and drugs, and she just wanted to like clean up her life and start new and I guess become a Buddhist and live that lifestyle. But unfortunately she wouldn't get there. So while she was traveling through Bangkok, she actually met Charles and AJ. They invited her to their hotel where they had their like hippie commune, and they in the show they kind of show it as like this was like her last hurrah, like she was gonna go out and drink and party, and then that was gonna be it. She was gonna continue her travels to go to the monastery in Tibet. So the real story is that they took her to a sex club and drugged her, and in the show they actually do a pretty good job of showing this. I mean, it's horrific, but they do a pretty good job of showing it the way that it supposedly happened. Again, I'm just finding all this information on the internet, some might be inaccurate, but they unfortunately do a really good job of showing what happened to her, and that was that she was drugged at the sex club, and they actually took her to the ocean and just kind of threw her in. Again, they stole her documents and all of that, and it's really sad. She was just somebody who had probably gone through a lot in her teen years and just wanted to start new and start her adult life outright, and it's just really sad. Their next victim was a young man named Tali Hakim. He was Turkish, and he the only thing I could really find about him was that he was a Sephardic Jew, and he was kind of like living this nomad lifestyle, and he was just wandering around, and he wound up on this hippie trail. For Vitali, his body was found burned on the road leading up to the hotel where Charles and AJ were running this fucking madness circle. After this, Charles and Marie actually went to Hong Kong for a vacation where they met two Dutch tourists. Their names are Henk Bintaja, he was 29, and Cornelia Hemker, who was only 25. They show Charles in this jewelry shop, and he sees Henk, and he can tell that he's kind of looking around, so him and Marie kind of walk up and are like, oh, are you looking for a ring for someone special? And he's like, yeah, like he wasn't really planning on proposing to his girlfriend at this point, but he was kind of like shopping around, like, you know, he's kind of got the idea in his head. And in the show, they're kind of like, oh, well, we can get you a really good deal, like, just meet up with us, blah, blah, blah. And they wound up going to like a bar or like a club or something. Again, Charles kind of continuing to pose as this like gym dealer. But either way, so Charles and Marie actually lure these two tourists back to Bangkok, where their hotel hippie commune thing is, under the guise of like, we have this awesome ring that we can give you, and we're gonna give you a great deal. You just have to come with us and like work for us, kind of. And these two being like tourists and young, and they're like, sure, this is great. Oh my God, we made these great friends. They're gonna help us, and they're gonna help us get this beautiful ring, and blah, 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 blah. So while Charles has these people at his commune, he actually starts poisoning them like he did to Dominique. And he's poisoning them and then getting them better, and they're kind of just going back and forth. And while they're there, a woman actually shows up, and her name is Charmaine Carreau. Charmaine was actually Vitali's girlfriend. They actually come there to investigate his death, because I guess at some point he had let her know where he was, and that was the last she had heard from him. Charles and AJ like immediately like freak out. They're like, oh my God, we gotta get rid of this girl. And Henk and Cornelia, they get very suspicious, because this girl shows up, and they kind of show it in the show, like she shows up and she's just causing a scene, like, where's my boyfriend, what'd you do to him, that kind of thing. And they also show in the show that AJ is actually wearing this necklace. Charmaine recognizes it as Vitali's necklace and is like, that's my boyfriend's necklace, where'd you get it? And they kind of sell it as like, oh, he gave it to me, you can have it if you want it, like that kind of thing, like trying to get her to go away, and it doesn't work. So on December 16th, 1975, unfortunately the bodies of Henk and Cornelia were found. They had been burned alive and strangled. Charmaine, her body was found similarly to that of Teresa's. She was found dumped in the ocean, basically. And the way that I forgot to mention this before, the way that Charles and AJ would do this was they would actually put the women in swimsuits, so it would look like an accidental drowning. And a lot of times they put like drugs and stuff, so it just looked like, oh, they were drunk and decided to go for a swim in the ocean and just drowned. But the drugs that they were giving them were like paralyzing them, basically, like date rape drugs, so they weren't able to move or defend themselves at all. Because of the way that Charmaine's body had been found, the way that Teresa's body had been found, a lot of locals started calling this the Bikini Killer, because, you know, everybody loves to put names on these things. After Hank and Cornelia's bodies were discovered, Charles and Marie booked it out of there. They went to Nepal using fake, I can only assume it was probably Hank and Cornelia's passports, because that's a theme that they show a lot in the show. It's kind of unclear on whose passports they're using, but they use, basically in the information I find, they're using forged travel documents to get from place to place. So in Nepal, Charles and Marie meet a couple. The gentleman was named Laurent Ormond Carrier. Again, these names, I mean, he's from Canada, so he's probably from Quebec too. And his American girlfriend, whose name was Connie Bronzik, and she was 29. Show, Marie meets this hippie couple, and they say that they were sold these rubies and they were going to sell them again to make a profit so they can continue their travels. And Marie's like, oh, you have rubies? Well, my boyfriend, he's a gem dealer, so come with me, and like he'll make sure they're real, and he'll get you like a good appraisal, like he might buy them from you, kind of thing. And the two are like, oh yeah, let's go. So they go to the hotel where Charles is, and Charles looks at them and he says, oh, I'm so sorry, these are fake, they're actually glass. So it's a really common scheme that people do here to trick tourists, basically. I'm not entirely sure on the details of that, if that's really what happened, but either way, in the show they show that these two are really bummed out, and they're like, oh, well, we're gonna hike this mountain, and they're really sad, and Charles is like, hey, you know what, I'll drive you up there tomorrow, like, to cheer you guys up, that kind of thing. He takes them up there, he gives them tea to celebrate their new friendship and all of that shit, and the tea's actually poisoned. And these two, they kind of pass out, take a little snooze, and they wake up, and AJ and Charles actually kill them. It's sad. So this unfortunate couple, their bodies were actually found on December 22nd of 1975. But before then, before the bodies were discovered, Charles and Marie decided to take their passports and use them to travel and escape again. So Charles and Marie, and AJ's in there somewhere, he's just kind of in the background, like whatever. They travel back to Bangkok, and those two cops, the two former cops that they had helped, had actually found their stash of stolen passports and confronted Charles about this. And Charles panicked and was like, ah, shit, we gotta go. And they wound up going to Calcutta. And in the show, they kind of like brushed over this real quick, but basically the whole thing was that they go to Calcutta, India, and they meet an Israeli tourist named Ivani Jacob. They meet him at a club, and they're hanging out, and they go to drug him just so they can rob him. They accidentally kill him. Again, they stole his passport and everything. So after they have killed Ivani Jacob, the three wind up going kind of in between India and Singapore, like a couple times, like little confusion action, I guess, I don't know. But they wind up going back to Bangkok. I don't know what happened to the two former cops. There's not a whole lot of information on them. Even though they knew that Charles and Marie were suspects, people were starting to catch on. Ultimately, the two were, well, all three of them were released because in theory, and kind of what they portray in the show, is that the Thai authorities didn't want to alert people and kind of cause an issue with tourism around this bikini killer, as they were calling him. From the information I've gathered on the internet, the three of them decided to travel to Malaysia to kind of escape this whole situation. And at some point, AJ was sent by Charles to go steal some gems, and he was seen delivering them to Charles, and that's the last anybody ever saw of AJ. Nobody knows what happened to him. In the show, they kind of portray it like Charles was just sick of AJ's shit and just like drove out, like kind of like you do, like you see in the shows where they take like a dog out into the field and they're like, nobody wants you here. That's kind of what he does in the show, is that he just kind of drops AJ off and is like, I don't want to see you ever again, bye. Charles and Marie continued to travel throughout Asia. They actually started to hire women to kind of seduce tourists, to be like, hey, give me your money, that kind of thing, and getting them drunk and stealing stuff from them and everything. So the new group wound up traveling to Bombay, where they met a French man named Jean-Luc Solomon. Same situation with Giovanni Jacob. They take him out to drink, he gets too drunk, they drug him, and he winds up passing away. After this, in the whole group, they fled to New Delhi. In the show, they show it as like this complete dump, and like Marie's like, I don't want to be here, and he's like, it's temporary, and blah, blah, blah. While they're in New Delhi, Charles actually starts to kind of collect his hippie friends again, you know? And he starts selling them drugs and all this stuff, and he actually convinces a group of tourists to let him be their tour guide. He's like, I know all about this place, guys, blah, blah, blah. And while he's doing this, he's like, oh, don't forget to take these anti-malaria pills or else you'll get really, really sick, that kind of thing. And the group actually started taking the pills. They kind of do a really good job of portraying this in the show as well. They start taking the pills and they start realizing, I don't
feel so good. What the hell did you give me?
And they realize, like, these aren't anti-malaria pills, we've been drugged. So they wind up actually overpowering Charles and Marie and reporting them to authorities. Charles, Marie, and these two women that they had kind of looped into their situation to seduce tourists, they actually were put into jail in Tihar jail in New Delhi. But it does not stop there, my friends. Oh no. Oh no. Charles wound up smuggling gems into the prison and bribing the prison guards. Yeah. He was treated like royalty in prison. He got like all kinds of stuff. He had like parties and he was just living it up and everything. Turned his entire trial into a whole spectacle. Like people were like, oh, who's this like playboy guy that's, you know, whatever. He's just some dude, leave him be, like that kind of thing. But it didn't work because he got sentenced to 12 years in prison in New Delhi. Marie was also convicted of drugging the tour group. However, her prison sentence would go a little bit differently. While in prison, she started, and they portray this in the show too, she starts having all these pains and she finds out she actually has ovarian cancer and it's pretty far gone. And in the show, they kind of portray it like it's like this really sad thing because she wanted to have babies and she wanted to have Charles babies and blah, blah, blah. And like, I do feel bad for her because cancer sucks and stuff, but like, girl, you knew this guy was a scumbag. You knew. And you helped him. But either way, she winds up getting extradited back to Quebec, where she eventually passed away in 1984 at the age of 38. So she kind of remained loyal to Charles. In the show, they don't show it that way. She kind of like gives him like a big fuck you like kind of thing before she leaves. But she still claimed that she was innocent until she died. So Charles, he continues to live it up in prison. He's befriending the guards and everything. He even started having journalists come in and interview him, and he would, you know, kind of brag about his body count. That sounded weird. He would brag about how many like murders he had committed, and even at one point claimed to have killed up to 24 people. And again, it's totally plausible because we don't know with this guy. This guy is whack, whack, whack.
His hair, whack. His gear, whack. His jewelry, whack. His footsteps, whack. The way that he talks, whack. The way that he doesn't even like to smile, whack. Me, I'm tight as fuck.
So Charles' sentence in New Delhi was only 12 years, but he had an arrest warrant in Thailand, which would have sent him probably to death because Thailand don't fuck around. The statute of limitations for this warrant was 20 years. So what does Charles do? This man bribes his prison guard friends and is like, hey, like, here's some money, like, let's have a party, like, let's get drunk, blah, blah, blah. So prison guards are like, hell yeah, like, getting drunk at work, let's go, man, like, whatever. And he winds up bribing them. They bring this alcohol, they have a big party, and while all of the guards and everybody else is inebriated, he just boop, 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 right out the prison. And this earned him more prison time. Would you know what also earned him? Getting out of the extradition limitation in Thailand. Yeah. So in 1997, Charles was officially released from prison. The warrant in Thailand had expired. A lot of the witnesses and the evidence against him was all gone at this point. So he just goes back to France and he's like, cool, whatever. And he gets to France and he's living this really like pretty nice lifestyle. Like, man isn't bothered. However, there is still one place on earth that really wanted Charles's head, and that was Nepal. So being the overconfident asshole he was, Charles decided to I guess this guy just gets off on getting out of like, or getting away with things because he decides to travel to Nepal. And he actually hired a local journalist to follow him around and take pictures showing him, like in the show they show him, he's literally in front of the airport. I think it's Kathmandu airport, sorry. He's just like, here I am, I'm here guys, whatever. Why? Like, this guy's weird. So Charles was at this casino and police, they've been alerted because obviously there's a journalist following him around, and they go to raid this casino and they arrest Charles and they reopen the homicide case against the French and American tourists that he killed. So on August 20th, 2004, Charles was finally sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in Nepal. And of course, he's appealed this many times. Like, I feel like he was just trying to like clear his name everywhere he could so he could just move freely through the world or whatever, but like, I feel like there's also some like weird ego thing, like he just liked the attention or something, but he appealed it, lost, and so he sits. So as of 2021, Charles Sobhraj is in prison in Nepal. He is 77 years old, and apparently he's not doing so good. He's not dead, but apparently his health just sucks, which I don't care. That's the story of Charles Sobhraj, aka The Serpent. I'll have to look up the name of the book. I know that the reason the show's named The Serpent is because of a book, which I don't remember if it is. But yeah, Charles is a huge piece of shit. And the fact that Thailand wouldn't arrest him, even though they pretty much knew he was guilty just for
tourism.
Insane. Fucking insane. I mean, I do kind of feel bad for Marie in a way. Like, ovarian cancer, that sucks, dude. Like, that sucks. And they pretty much just like let her get so bad till it was like, oh, you're not gonna live anyways, like go back to Quebec. I don't know. I feel bad for her, but honestly, I kind of just wish Charles was the one that died of cancer, not her. Like, I feel like she was just brainwashed. Because aren't Canadians supposed to be like really polite? Like, why would a little Quebecois? What are they called? Quebecois? I don't know. People from Quebec. I feel like this is gonna be a really long video. I've already been filming for almost an hour. So I'm gonna go ahead and call it that. So if you wanna watch The Serpent, it's on Netflix. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm just gonna finish my beer. Knickknacks here. This is a real coyote skull. It's been articulated, so I mean one of the teeth fell out, but that's fine. My friend Kayla made me this, and I think it's so cute. It's just so cute. I love it. I'm gonna tag her Etsy page on here for you, so you can check it out. Skull, isn't he so cute? Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Whatever. Either way, that's all I have. Goodbye.